And good morning to you all once again. And once again to you, happy Mother's Day. And since it is Mother's Day, I will start this message off with a story about my dad. Doesn't that make sense? Makes about as much sense as I ever make. The old timer, as I have always called my father to his name, to his face, and he loved that actually. But the old timer, when we went to buy bulls, which we would do, he always bought bulls. He didn't buy a bull, one or two. We went and we bought a herd of bulls at one time because you wanted the genetics to be the same. You wanted your herd to be consistent. So you didn't just buy a bull here and a bull there. You went to somebody's place, to their ranch, and you looked at the bulls and you bought the bulls. But when we would get there to go look at the bulls, which I went with him a few times to buy bulls, the rancher would always say, well, let's go look at the bull pasture. And the dad would say, nope, nope, nope. I want to see the cows. Before he ever looked at the sons, he wanted to see the mamas. Because the mamas are the important part. That's what he's raising. He wasn't raising bulls. He was raising cows. I want to see the mamas. Because the mamas are what matters. The mamas don't have it. The son ain't going to have it either. And that's the message of Mother's Day. I could quit now.
Please. Oh.
But because you raised it too, I won't, Terry. All right, he's upstaged me again. Proverbs.
You called me a little kid.
Proverbs is where we're at today. We don't preach from Proverbs a whole lot, but we're at the very end of the book of Proverbs today. We are in the 31st chapter, verses 10 to 31, and that's the end of Proverbs. That's boom. That is the end. But before we talk about the end of Proverbs, let's listen to the beginning of Proverbs, because the beginning sets up the end, just like the mama cows. I'll tell you what the sun is all about. Chapter 1, and I'm going to read the whole chapter. It's, I think, 32 verses, I think. The Proverbs of Solomon, son of David, king of Israel. For attaining wisdom and discipline, for understanding words of insight, for acquiring a disciplined and prudent life, doing what is right and just and fair, for giving prudence to the simple, knowledge and discretion to the young. Let the wise listen and add to their learning, and let the discerning get guidance. For understanding proverbs and parables, the sayings and the riddles of the wise, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. But fools despise wisdom and discipline. Listen, my son, to your father's instruction, and do not forsake your mother's teaching. They will be a garland to grace your head, and a chain to adorn your neck. My son, if sinners entice you, do not give in to them. If they say, come along with us, let's lie in wait for someone's blood. Let's waylay some harmless soul. Let's swallow them alive like the grave, and whole like those who go down to the pit. We will get all sorts of valuable things and fill our houses with plunder. Throw in your lot with us, and we will share a common purse. My son, do not go along with them. Do not set foot on their paths. For their feet rush into sin. They are swift to shed blood. How useless to spread a net in full view of all the birds. These men lie in wait for their own blood. They waylay only themselves. Such is the end to all who go after ill-gotten gain. It takes away the lives of those who get it. Wisdom calls aloud in the street. She raises her voice in the public square. At the head of the noisy street, she cries out. In the gateways of the city, she makes her speech. How long will you simple ones love your simple ways? How long will mockers delight in mockery, and fools hate knowledge? If you had responded to my rebuke, I would have poured out my heart to you and made my thoughts known to you. But since you rejected me when I called, and no one gave heed when I stretched out my hand, since you ignored all my advice, I would not accept my rebuke. In turn, I will laugh at your disaster. I will mock when calamity overtakes you, when calamity overtakes you like a storm. when disaster sweeps over you like a whirlwind, when distress and trouble overwhelm you. Then they will call to me, but I will not answer. They will look for me, but they will not find me. Since they hated knowledge and did not choose to fear the Lord, since they would not accept my advice and spurn my rebuke, they will eat the fruit of their ways and be filled with the fruit of their schemes. For the waywardness of the simple will kill them, and the complacency of fools will destroy them. But whoever listens to me will live in safety and be at ease without fear of harm. That's the beginning of the book of Proverbs. It's a book of teachings from parents, but it's also listen to your mother. It's Mother's Day. Chapter 31 in the book of Proverbs, 10 to 31, is an acrostic poem in the Hebrew. It loses all of that meaning when we look at it in English. Because what it is each verse, each successive verse, starts at the beginning of the Hebrew alphabet and goes one letter at a time. Each verse begins with a letter of that alphabet until you get to the end. So we don't see that because in English it's not alphabetical. But in Hebrew it is. And it's also what they call a chiasm. It's a sandwich. We talk about that. And at the middle of this poem, there's a lot of chiastic writings in the Scripture. A lot of it in the New Testament. But there's also it in the New Old, and here we have that. At the middle of the poem is the message. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Ode to a capable wife. And here the word that is translated as wife means woman. It could be a wife, it could be this is the message. It's written by King Lemuel from his mother. But King Lemuel is a figure that we don't know anything about, and some think that is just a metaphor, not a metaphor, but another name for King Solomon. The Bathsheba has written this to Solomon, is what many scholars believe, from his mother to him, teaching him what to look for in a wife. Unfortunately for Solomon, he didn't heed it. He was a little bit on the hedonistic side when it came to his relationships with women. Perhaps he would have done better if he had been as wise as the words that are shared with him here. Ode to a capable wife, verses 10 to 31. A capable wife who can find? She is far more precious than jewels. The heart of her husband trusts in her, and he will have no lack of gain. She does him good and not harm. All the days of her life she seeks wool and flax and works with willing hands. She is like the ships of the merchant. She brings her food from far away. She rises while it is still night and provides food for her household and tasks for her servant girls. She considers a field and buys it. With the fruit of her hands she plants a vineyard. She girds herself with strength and makes her arms strong. She perceives that her merchandise is profitable. Her lamp does not go out at night. She puts her hands to the distaff, and her hands hold the spindle. She holds her hand to the poor, or opens her hand to the poor, and reaches out her hands to the needy. She is not afraid for her household when it snows, for all her household are clothed in crimson. She makes herself coverings. Her clothing is fine linen and purple. Her husband is known in the city gates, taking his seat among the elders of the land. She makes linen garments and sells them. She supplies the merchants with sashes. Strength and dignity are her clothing, and she laughs at the time to come. She opens her mouth with wisdom, and the teaching of kindness is on her tongue. She looks well to the ways of her household, and does not eat the bread of idleness. Her children rise up and call her happy, her husband too, and he praises her. Many women have done excellently, but you surpass them all. Charm is deceitful, and beauty is vain, but a woman who fears the Lord is to be praised. Give her a share in the fruit of her hands, and let her works praise her in the city gates. Here, the words that the NRSV translates as a capable wife, that word capable there means strength, valor, might. This is a woman that knows what she's doing. She knows where she's going. This is what you want, someone that is brave and strong. She is more precious than jewels. Women are a sacred thing. That may sound strange to say. We live in a crazy, crazy, crazy time. When we have someone, and that may get a little political, I apologize, and I'll try not to go too far down the rabbit hole. We live in a crazy time when we have someone testify before Congress that they can't tell you what a woman is. Now, I'm not a biologist, but guess what? I am an animal science major, and biology was one of the considerations I had. For my college degree, I was considering going on and getting my PhD in biology and teaching college biology. That was one of my thoughts when I was enrolling in school. And I continued to think that for a couple, 3 years in school and finally abandoned that. But as an animal science major, I have taken a number of anatomy, a number of physiology, a number of genetic classes. So I do feel like, and plus the fact that I grew up on a ranch and I've watched animals reproduce, and I've had the privilege of having known both my grandmothers and my mother and my wife, and I've got 4 sisters, so I have been around a few women in my day, and I do know a little bit about, again, biology. I know what a woman is. And you can't be a woman just by saying you feel like a woman or you want to be a woman. That's something that God gave to you. God made you sacred. God set you apart. Women are sacred. We men, we'll talk about men on Father's Day, but our sacred job is to protect. We're here, we're bigger physically, we're stronger physically, typically. And that's the way it works in species where a man is there to protect the woman. Women are valuable. Men are cheap. Why, historically, have men gone to war and women stayed home? With very few exceptions. Almost all cultures, the women do not go to war. Because all cultures know that they are the sacred thing. The women give life. God gave them the gift. Same times may seem like a curse. You ladies endure a lot that us men cannot relate to. I'm reminded of that by my wife sometimes. But I did study biology a little bit, and I do understand animals. So I understand it. I haven't experienced it, but I understand a lot of that. And of course, I can only understand it as much as I've experienced, perhaps, my wife would tell me. But nonetheless, women have that gift. Women were given that blessing, that honor, that responsibility to give life, to be life givers. Now, not everyone has children, but everyone can help influence and teach the children. There's something about a mother, a woman, the children need. Now, there's something about a father the children need. We'll talk about that come Father's Day. That's a month away. You can't be a woman just because you feel like you want to be a woman. You're born with chromosomes, you're born with gametes. And gametes, we get into a little biology here. A gamete is a sex cell. That's the germ cell. For men, that would be sperm. For women, that would be the ovum. That is your gamete. And you have to have both of them in order to have a child. But the interesting thing about mothers is I share more genetically with my mother than my father. That's just the reality. Children are influenced more by their mother because she raises them from a standpoint of typically being around them a little bit more, but from a strictly biological aspect, only the mitochondrial DNA. We're going to get a little bit deep, and I apologize. The mitochondrial DNA is in the ovum. It's not in the sperm cell. The mitochondrial DNA, 100% of the genetic material goes from mother to child. I hold in me 100% Native American mitochondrial DNA because back on my mother's side, you come to a Native American woman back in the 1700s. So under a microscope, I'm Native American. Plus, The Y chromosome, now they're getting more ideas about some of the cells, some of the genes that we've always looked at as being garbage. They used to call them garbage genes, that some of them have epigenetic effects, meaning that they cause the way that the genes are expressed. That is what epigenetics would mean. It means how that gene is expressed. Some of them have that potential. But when I was in college, I used to say that on the Y chromosome there was 11 active genes. And I didn't look, but there's probably thousands, if not several thousand genes on the X chromosome. You have to have an X and Y chromosome. So as a male, every male, definitely boys, share more genetic material with their mother than their father. Mothers are important. That's why when Dad went to look at the bulls, I don't care about the bulls. I want to see the mothers, because that's the important one. That's the base. Mothers are the base. And that's the point I'm trying to drive home. I guess I'm getting a little bit deep down the road of biology, and I apologize for that. We live in a society that's trying to cheapen the nuclear family. And the attack has been relentless upon men for many years. But it's also perhaps more sneakily been upon women. And I see it more and more today to cheapen what it means to be a woman. I can never be a woman. Any achievement I could claim as a woman would not be real, would be a facade. This sermon will probably get me in trouble with some, and I apologize for that. But it's important. God said it in the beginning of Proverbs. They will come and they will try to lead you astray. They'll try to tell you some things that are the wrong path. The warning in Proverbs we need to take to heart today, at the beginning of that book. Do not for a moment cheapen that which is sacred. And the most sacred thing that I've ever experienced in my life is women. Besides God, we won't go there. People will talk about women somehow diminishing women. And I talked to them at the Shady Oaks this week. The most intelligent person I ever met in my life was my mother. And that's another thing that you get from your mom. Did you know that? Intelligence is much more strongly correlated with your mother than your father. So if you have half a bit of sense, thank your mama. Because most of what you got for here, not all of it, but most of it came from mom. And so I never grew up thinking women were less than men. I always thought they were better than me. And I know I'm right. And it upsets me when I see people trying to diminish that which God made sacred. Don't let them do that. Don't let them lead you down that path, trying to waylay the uninformed. Because there's a lot of misinformation in the world. There's a lot of things that are misled. A lot of people would tell you that this poem at the end of Proverbs is misogynist, that it's spelling out this woman, it's saying, oh, look at all this hard work she has to do. She's doing all the hard work. But realize that that culture, unlike our culture, which we like to think, that culture was extremely patriarchal. Women didn't even leave the home. But yet, God wrote in this book, this letter to Solomon, or to this King Lemuel, whoever he is, whether he's Solomon or he's another king, it's written here that this woman bought land. This woman hired people. This woman was the success of the family. Because she was so successful, the focus point of this sermon, or this poem, is that her husband is able to sit at the gates and stand in judgment. He's able to serve God in the community only because his wife is there to take care of things. Because she is there as the capable one. And by her blessing, by the blessing God gave her, she's able to bless him, and he can follow the path that God has for him. and that's to sit at the city gate as a judge. That's what it means to be sitting at the city gates in this community. He's among the judging elders. He sits among the elders of the land. It's not that she's in a subservient role at all. She's the important one. She's the blessing. Just as all of you mothers, all of you grandmothers, each and every single one of you is a blessing. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so very much for the mothers. We thank you for the grandmothers. We thank you for the great-great-great-grandmothers that you blessed us with. We have with Bessie here as a member of this congregation. Lord, please don't ever let us forget that they are the base. They are the thing that we build upon. They are the thing that you sent us here to protect, to care for, and to enable them to share and to fulfill the blessing, the responsibility, the guidance, the role that you blessed them with. Pray all of this in your loving glory.
Thank you all for being with us on this Mother's Day, and I hope you all enjoyed the gifts there. One thing I forgot to mention when I was going through the sermon, I think you've all heard about that when a woman is carrying a child, that some of the fetal tissues will travel into the woman's body, and for many years, if not decades, those cells can persist in the mother's body. So you literally can be, when you are walking around for many years as a mother, you're carrying your child with you, whether that child lives to term or not. Those fetal cells remain. And sometimes they can help heal the mother of some things too. So that's one of those phenomena that's interesting. But one of the other things that you may not be aware of is that when a little girl is born, when that beautiful blessing of a sacred woman is born, in that little tiny body is all of the egg cells, all the ovum that she will ever have. They have to mature, not the same with little boys, with gametes with boys, they're different. But the egg cells are all in that little girl when she's born. Which means that a part of you once was carried by your grandmother. That's that connection, that's that base that I talked about. That's where you truly come from. Men come and go. That mother is forever. Praise be to God. May the Lord bless you and keep you, and may his face shine down upon you and grant you all his peace. Amen. And let's